I never thought I'd be the one sharing a story like this. Stories about betrayal always felt like something that happened to other people, not to someone like me. But here I am, telling my truth, not for sympathy or excuses, but simply because it happened. When I married Daniel, I believed I had found the one. He was everything I thought I wanted: smart, kind, funny, and full of charm. We didn't have much, but we had each other. Our wedding was small, but full of love and hope. We dreamed of building a life together, filled with laughter, warmth, and maybe even kids one day. Those first few years were wonderful. We made the most of what we had, took little trips when we could afford them, cooked together, and spent hours talking about our dreams. Daniel was deeply focused on his career, often working long hours at his firm. I supported him completely, even when it meant putting my own goals on hold. That's what I thought love meant, giving without expecting anything in return. To help with expenses, I took a part-time job at a boutique while managing our home. I didn't mind at first. I believed that once Daniel became more stable in his career, it would be my turn to chase my passions. But time passed, and that moment never came. Instead, I started feeling like a shadow in my own marriage. Daniel's work became everything: long meetings, frequent business trips, and phone calls that stretched into the night. Anytime I tried to reconnect or plan something special, he'd brush it off, saying it wasn't the right time. He always promised that a better, more relaxed life was just a few years away. I wanted to believe him, so I did. But things kept getting worse. The man who once left sweet notes or brought home flowers was gone. Our conversations became mechanical, just about bills, chores, or what needed fixing. The intimacy faded too, replaced with silence and routine. I kept telling myself that every marriage hits tough spots, and this was just ours. Then came Eric. He wasn't someone I was looking for. He simply showed up at the boutique one day as our new manager. He was kind, attentive, and actually listened when I spoke. At first, our talks were all about work. Slowly, they became more personal, about our favorite books, music, childhood memories. He made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in years. I didn't notice it right away, but I had been craving that feeling, being cared for, even just noticed. I told myself it was innocent. We weren't doing anything wrong. But over time, I realized I was waking up excited to see him at work, more than I ever looked forward to going home. I started dressing up more, putting on a bit of makeup, hoping he'd say something kind, and he always did. The messages started next. At first, they were just light jokes. Then they became longer, more personal. We'd talk late into the night. He'd ask about my day, how I was really feeling, and I could tell he genuinely cared. I hadn't had that kind of attention from Daniel in so long. I didn't realize how much I needed it, until someone gave it to me. Eric noticed the sadness I tried so hard to hide. He picked up on the little things, how quiet I was, how often I looked tired even when I smiled. One evening, while Daniel was away on another business trip, Eric asked if I wanted to grab a coffee after work. I hesitated, unsure if it was appropriate, but in the end, I said yes. We met at a quiet cafe. What was supposed to be a quick coffee turned into hours of conversation. For the first time in years, I laughed without forcing it. I felt something stir in me, something that had been asleep for a long time. On the way home, I couldn't shake the mix of emotions. I hadn't physically crossed a line, but inside, I knew something had shifted. There was a bond forming that felt far deeper than friendship. What began as a single mistake soon turned into something much more. There were late-night meetups, secret texts, and stolen moments I knew were wrong but couldn't seem to stop. Every time I told myself it would be the last time, I broke that promise. I became good at hiding it all. Lying came easier than I ever imagined. Daniel was so focused on work that he never suspected anything. I'd tell him I was out with friends, running errands, or handling family matters. I hated who I was becoming, but I kept going anyway. The guilt grew heavier with time. Ironically, it was around then that Daniel began to notice me again. He brought home flowers, planned little trips, and made an effort to reconnect. But by that point, I was split in two. Part of me wanted to end things with Eric, to return to the life I had once dreamed of with Daniel. But Eric always had the right words, reminding me how alone I had felt, how happy he had made me. And I would fall back into it, all over again. Everything came to a head on our 10th wedding anniversary. Daniel surprised me with a weekend getaway in the mountains, a quiet cabin, just the two of us. He said he wanted us to escape, to reconnect. A part of me wanted that too. I was scared, though, because I wasn't sure if there was anything left between us. But during that weekend, Daniel opened up to me in ways I hadn't seen in years. He admitted to taking me for granted, to losing sight of what mattered. He held my hands and cried, promising to do better. In that moment, I saw the man I had once fallen in love with, and the weight of what I'd done came crashing down. How could I have betrayed him like this? How did I let myself fall so far? When we got home, I knew it had to end. I had to break things off with Eric. But saying goodbye was harder than I thought it would be. Eric was hurt, begging me to remember all the times Daniel had made me feel alone. But my decision was made. I had already caused so much pain. I couldn't keep adding to it. I thought that by ending things with Eric, the worst was over. That I could put the pieces back together and rebuild my marriage. But guilt doesn't just go away. It followed me everywhere. Every kind gesture from Daniel felt like a knife to the heart. He thought we were finally getting better, and in a way, we were. I cooked his favorite meals, planned small surprises, even suggested we try counseling. I was doing everything I could to make things right. And Daniel, ever hopeful, welcomed it all. He believed in us. He believed in me. But I was falling apart inside. Every time I looked at him, I saw the man who trusted me completely, and I was hiding the one thing that could destroy him. Days turned into weeks, then months. We slipped into a routine again. On the outside, things looked like they were healing. But deep down, I knew the truth hadn't disappeared. I kept telling myself the worst had passed. Then one day, the phone rang. I froze when I saw the name. Eric. I hadn't heard from him since the day I ended everything. My heart pounded as I stared at the screen. I should have let it ring. I didn't. Against my better judgment, I answered. I need to see you, he said, his voice shaky and low. No, Eric, we've been over this. It's done, I said firmly. It's not over for me, he whispered. You can't just walk away like none of it mattered. His words struck something inside me, a complicated mix of guilt, anger, and fear. I didn't respond. I just hoped silence would calm him. I've been patient, he continued, voice growing harder. But I'm not going to be your dirty little secret forever. Eric, please don't do this, I begged, my voice barely a whisper. I deserved more. You used me, he snapped. That accusation cut deeper than I expected. But arguing would only make things worse. I ended the call, telling myself he just needed to vent and that he'd let it go. But deep down, I knew better. Eric had changed. The man who once made me feel seen now felt unpredictable, angry, volatile, and wounded. Then the texts began. At first, they were cryptic, pictures of places we'd gone together, screenshots of our old conversations. I panicked. What if Daniel saw them? I scrambled to protect myself, changed passwords, blocked numbers, but the messages kept coming, from different numbers, different emails. Eric was playing a dangerous game, and I was trapped in it. I thought about telling Daniel. I truly did, but the fear was paralyzing. How could I confess now, after everything he'd done to rebuild us? He'd started to trust me again. The risk of losing him, of losing our life, our home, was too heavy. But by keeping it all inside, I was giving Eric more power over me. And then it happened. One evening, Daniel came home quieter than usual. Something in his demeanor instantly unsettled me. He avoided my eyes, his face stiff and pale. My stomach dropped. I knew. Before he said a word, I knew. Finally, he broke the silence. His voice was cold, calm, measured. I need to ask you something. My hands started shaking. Of course, what is it? Is there anything you need to tell me? My throat closed. I couldn't speak. My mind raced, grasping for a lie that wouldn't sound like one. Then he slowly placed his phone on the table. On the screen were the very messages Eric had sent. The photos, the texts, every word, every secret I had tried so hard to bury. For a moment, everything around me went still. I can explain, I stammered, my voice barely audible and already breaking. Explain, Daniel echoed, his voice barely above a whisper. Explain what? That you've been lying to me. That while I was out there killing myself to give us a better life, you were busy betraying everything we built. Tears streamed down my cheeks. Daniel, I never meant for it to happen. I was lonely. I was lost. Lonely. He snapped, cutting me off. His voice rose with each word. And your solution was to crawl into someone else's arms. Do you have any idea what you've done? To me, to us. I fell to my knees, sobbing. Please, Daniel, please. I made a terrible mistake. I ended it months ago. I swear to you, it's over. But my words couldn't reach him. His face was blank, carved in stone. Only his eyes gave him away, filled with a depth of pain I couldn't even begin to undo. You ended it, he repeated, letting out a bitter, humorless laugh. Congratulations. I guess I'm supposed to be grateful. He stood up abruptly and headed for the door. Daniel, please don't leave. I cried out, reaching for him. We can fix this, we can go to counseling, we can. Counseling, he turned sharply, eyes blazing. You think therapy is going to erase what you did? You shattered my trust, you shattered my dignity. I had never seen him like this, so broken, so gutted by betrayal. And then, in a voice colder than I ever thought possible from the man I once called my soulmate, he said, You made your choice. Now live with it. Then he walked out. The door slammed behind him, the sound echoing through the house like a final verdict. I collapsed on the floor, my sobs rising into the stillness. The walls around me, the walls we'd painted, laughed beside, fought in, made love between, they now felt like tombstones. A graveyard of everything we once were. The days that followed were a blur of pain. Daniel moved into a hotel. He didn't answer my calls. He ignored every message. His family found out. My parents found out. The whispers started. The judgment. The shock. The confusion. The quiet, cutting disappointment. I had shattered more than a marriage. I had shattered the illusion of who I thought I was. Friends stopped calling. Family gatherings turned into awkward silences where eyes darted away and conversations tiptoed around my presence. My job at the boutique, once a haven of routine and friendly faces, became unbearable. Gossip spreads fast in small communities. Whispers followed me. Even strangers began to look at me like I wore my shame on my skin, like a brand I couldn't wash off. And Eric, he vanished like smoke. After detonating the life I'd built, he disappeared without a trace, no apologies, no closure. The same man who once swore I was everything to him burned down my world and walked away as if it meant nothing. I was left to pick up the wreckage alone. Weeks passed without a single word from Daniel. I fell into a deep spiral. Depression wrapped around me like a heavy blanket. My world shrank to the size of my regrets. Sleepless nights, tear-stained pillows, the hollow echo of memories in rooms that used to be filled with love. The realization hit me hardest one quiet morning. This wasn't just a mistake that hurt Daniel. I had broken something inside myself too. One afternoon, completely numb, I received a letter. My hands trembled as I opened it. It was from Daniel's attorney. He was filing for divorce. I sat there, the paper trembling in my fingers, my mind blank. I couldn't process the finality of it. This wasn't a nightmare I could shake myself out of. This was it. This was my new reality. There were no tearful confrontations. No last-minute pleas. No hopeful glances across the kitchen table. Just cold legal documents. Just signatures. Just silence. 10 years of love, pain, growth, and dreams, reduced to paperwork and a house that no longer felt like home. As I packed my belongings to move out, I stumbled upon an old photo album tucked deep in the back of a drawer, pictures from our honeymoon, our first Christmas together, lazy Sundays on the couch, laughing, dreaming, loving each other. I held the album to my chest and sobbed, the kind of sob that comes from a place too deep to describe. I mourned the life I had destroyed, my life, our life, with my own hands. I reached out to Daniel one final time. Not to beg him to come back, not to rewrite what couldn't be undone, but simply to apologize. To acknowledge the pain I had caused, and to own it. We met in a quiet park where we used to have picnics early in our marriage. The place felt smaller now, colder somehow. He sat across from me, silent. His face was unreadable, his eyes distant. I don't expect you to forgive me, I said, my voice trembling. But I needed you to hear it from me. I am so sorry for everything. He nodded but didn't speak. I know I can't undo it, I whispered. I know I've lost you. But I want you to know, I never stopped loving you. Even when I was lost. He finally looked at me, his voice calm and steady. Love isn't enough when trust is gone. Those words hit harder than any scream ever could. We sat in silence for a while. Then he stood up and walked away without looking back, leaving me sitting on the bench alone, watching the man I once knew disappear for the last time. That was the last time I saw Daniel. The months that followed were hollow. I moved into a small apartment, started rebuilding from scratch. I threw myself into work. I started therapy. I worked on forgiving myself, though that, to this day, remains the hardest part. Looking back, I see how blind I was to my own emptiness. I searched for comfort in all the wrong places instead of facing my pain head-on. I let loneliness become an excuse for betrayal. And in the end, I learned the most painful truth of all. Not every mistake can be undone. And by the time I realized the damage, it was too late. I live every day with the weight of my choices, not as a victim, but as someone who failed. My story isn't about seeking sympathy. It's about owning what I did. Because sometimes, the greatest punishment isn't what the world does to you, it's what you're left to live with inside your own mind. Daniel moved on. Perhaps he found happiness again. He deserved it. I remain here, a silent witness to my own downfall. A reminder that one moment of weakness can unravel a lifetime of love. Time passed. Seasons changed. Years slipped by. The ache softened, but it never truly left. It lingers, a quiet echo of what I lost because of the choices I made. Daniel eventually remarried. I found out through mutual friends. When I saw that photo of him with his new wife, genuinely smiling, it hit me hard. Sadness, regret, a faint relief. He looked free, he looked whole, and that mattered more than my longing. As for me, I focused on healing. Therapy became a sanctuary. It forced me to confront truths I once avoided, that the affair wasn't just about being neglected. It was about my own fear, my insecurity, my silence. I hadn't spoken up. I hadn't asked for what I needed. I had run, from pain, from myself. Instead of facing it, I sought escape in the arms of someone who offered ease, not love. In time, I found a small circle of friends who knew everything and didn't judge me. Their support became my anchor. Slowly, I rebuilt, not for anyone else, not to move on to someone new, but to finally make peace with the woman in the mirror. The biggest lesson I carry is this: betrayal doesn't end when the affair ends. Its consequences ripple through your marriage, your reputation, your identity, your soul. Forgiveness from others is rare. Forgiveness of self, that's a war you fight every single day. Sometimes, I still walk past that park bench, the last place Daniel and I ever spoke. I sit down, close my eyes, and whisper, "I'm sorry." Not because I think he'll hear me, but because I need to keep reminding myself to never run again. To face what hurts, to stay honest, even when it's ugly. My story isn't a redemption arc. There's no perfect ending here. It's a story of consequences. And it's mine to carry for the rest of my life. Some stories don't end with healing or reconciliation, just silence and the weight of what could have been. This story is a reminder that trust, once broken, is almost impossible to rebuild. And that sometimes, the harshest punishment isn't losing someone, it's knowing that it was your own hand that pushed them away. Let this be a lesson about honesty, accountability, and the deep cost of emotional escape. Thank you for staying with us through this difficult but honest journey. Your time, attention, and willingness to engage with stories like this help us shine a light on the complexities of love, pain, and growth. If this resonated with you, please like, comment, or share. It might be the voice someone else needs to hear today. Your support keeps this space alive. Disclaimer: this story is a fictional dramatization inspired by real emotions and relationship dynamics. It is not intended to shame, justify, or promote infidelity in any form. Viewer discretion is advised, especially for those sensitive to themes of betrayal, emotional distress, or relationship trauma.